Well, happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome to another office hours here on hosting.com's Agency Success. My name is Nathan Ingram. I am the agency trainer here at hosting.com and so glad that you've joined us for another of our office hours where you can ask anything you would like. So the floor is yours. I'll start off with several little bits of news, I believe, that impacts us as WordPress professionals, and then we will dive right into your questions. Several things to talk about today. So glad you're all here. Again, if you'd like to ask a question, the link to do so is waiting on you in the chat now. So let's get started with something that has taken a lot of my time over the last couple of weeks, and that is the California Invasion of Privacy Act, otherwise known as CIPA. Have any of you had clients that have gotten these demand letters? So there have been groups like Termageddon that have been talking about this now for several months. And one of our clients actually got one of these notifications a couple of weeks ago. So basically, this California Invasion of Privacy Act was a law written in the 1960s aimed at wiretapping and things like that, which some enterprising attorneys in California have made it apply to web tracking. So Google Analytics cookies, social media cookies, these sorts of things. And a court has upheld that tacitly. So there's some legal stuff that you'd want to read a little bit more about this. But basically, this is like a reiteration of the old Getty Images letter. How many of you web geezers out there like me remember the Getty Images letter? This was probably 10 plus years ago, where people had used copyright images on their website, and you'd get this demand letter in the mail from a law firm saying that you're using a copyright image and there's a demand for thousands of dollars and so forth. So it's complicated, right? Now, so this is sort of like that. And the way this works is, it's totally legal. That's the thing. According to California law today, January 29th of 2026, this is legal for these attorneys to do. If a resident of California visits your website and Google Analytics places a tracking cookie, which it's going to do if you have Google Analytics installed or any social media tracking pixels, boom, that cookie gets installed just by visiting the website. And as a result of that, by the current reading of California law, they can send you a demand letter for $5,000. Yeah. And so we have a local client that's local to us here in Birmingham, Alabama. They are and I'm not going to give details. They're just a small business, right? They literally just deal with their small suburban community here in the Birmingham area. They don't market to California consumers, but they got sucked up in this demand letter. We might call it a scheme, but it is technically legal. Anyway, they got this demand letter. And so, yeah, we've been thinking through solutions. And ultimately, the only way to deal with this right now that I'm aware of is, you have to have something that's going to block cookies. And so some sort of cookie consent tool. We've pivoted to Termageddon, which is run by friends of mine for many years. It's an excellent solution, but you have to have something that's going to block the cookie from being loaded unless the user says, I agree. It's not enough just to have a banner that says, hey, we use cookies. It's not an information. You actually have to block the cookie until they click that agree button. And so it's complicated, and setting that up correctly is important because you don't want to block analytics, altogether. So it's complicated. So this, I have this particular article on the screen. I've dropped the link to it in the chat. You can just Google, if you're watching this on the replay, Google this title. But this is the California Lawyers Association. And there was some hope last year that this was going to get remedied by the California legislature. However, as many things in which you put your hope in politicians, it didn't come to pass. Big surprise. And as you scroll down, basically what happened was it would pass the California Senate unanimously. It went to the California House, the Assembly, and it stalled. And then the author of the bill kind of backed away from it, citing outstanding concerns around consumer privacy. Now, one can only imagine what that means. But anyway, there was some hope that maybe California would straighten out its own laws, and that's not happening. So politics is not the solution to many things, this included. So yeah, it's a complicated thing for our clients. So if you've not yet communicated with your clients about the reality of CIPA, I would definitely recommend that you do it. You can Google CIPA and Termageddon. They have some great information about that. It's a real deal. So I'm just going back and catching a couple of questions. Ben is asking, is it global or just the USA? So Ben, technically any website that loads a tracking cookie on a resident of California's computer is liable. Now, whether they would actually enforce it or whatever, I have no idea. It would seem far-fetched for them to try to enforce this law overseas, but lawyers are lawyers. So there you go. It is interesting. So there's a lot more information about this. If you just Google CIPA, you can find a lot of information. The article, again, on Termageddon's website regarding CIPA is a really good write-up. But yeah, the only way to deal with this is by blocking the cookies. Now, that's if you're going to use Google Analytics. Another option is, and this is what we're doing for our smaller nonprofit clients that don't want to invest in the cost of something like Termageddon or something like that. You could either remove analytics altogether. I mean, some people don't care whether their websites have analytics or not. Or you can install a WordPress-based analytics plugin like Independent Analytics is a good option. Let's see, Independent Analytics. So that's independentwp.com. The free version of this is excellent. It does not drop a cookie. It is cookieless, privacy first. It works great. So we're actually moving some of our sites to this. Now, here's the other thing. Number one, this should be covered in your contract. Like, you're not responsible for, the client needs to let you know if they have to meet certain privacy standards and so forth. Definitely make sure this is in your contract. Second of all, we actually found some sites that we manage where just as a service to them, we set up Google Analytics. And so they didn't actually make that decision. So those, we've gone back and taken it off just so there's no liability. So just think about that. Independent, if all they want to see is how many people visited my site and what pages, Independent Analytics is great, and you don't have to worry about these tracking cookies. So it's frustrating, right? It's getting harder and harder to do what we do, but this is a reality that we came face to face with just last week. So thought I'd bring it to you. All right. Any other questions about this that I missed? There's a lot of chatter in the chat, obviously. Christine, I thought that California privacy stuff only applied if you met certain thresholds. This is different. This is not CalAPA, the previous California policy that was concerning. This is CIPA, and it's anybody, anywhere. This is different. So this is, again, it's taking a law from the 1960s that was written to deal with wiretapping, like basically recording or tracking a person without their consent. And they've applied this to web analytics. So it's anybody, anywhere. I have feelings about this, but yeah, it's something we need to be aware of. All right. So there you go. Let's move on to another bit of news. Sue's asking, can you just disclaim it? I mean, I don't think so. I think, technically by the letter of the reading of the law, if you install a tracking cookie on someone's website without their consent, then you violated the current reading of the law. Again, that's where the legislature, there was a push to try to say this doesn't apply, but that got stalled. So it's still a court upheld this reading. So there you go. Really frustrating. All right, let's move along to a little bit of WordPress specific news, and that's Mary Hubbard, the executive director of WordPress, has published big picture goals for 2026. I've dropped that link in the chat as well. This is on the Make WordPress blog, and several things. A lot of talk about core updates in WordPress 7.0. They have established a 3 release cycle for 2026. These releases will coincide with major WordPress flagship events, WordPress Asia, EU, and US, as I understand it. There's a lot of focus here also on continued investment in AI in WordPress. They want to revamp meetups, which, yep, that'd be great. WordPress meetups have died a slow death since COVID. And then also talking about the new WordPress education programs. If you haven't seen this, this is a really interesting initiative. I'll drop the link in the chat about trying to get the next generation of users into WordPress by focusing on college campuses. So there's actually some interesting initiatives here. If you're interested, just take a look at that link. I think it's pretty cool. Speaking of WordPress releases, we are still on track for Tuesday's release of WordPress 6.9.1. That's really helpful. It's a bunch of bug fixes, nothing really substantial here. It should update automatically on your websites unless you've told it not to automatically update minor releases like this. And I don't recommend that. Like you want to update to these minor releases. We updated all of our sites to 6.9 a few weeks ago. No issues there. Yeah, so anticipate this being no problem whatsoever, but expect your inbox to be filled with, hey, we just updated you to the latest version of WordPress on Tuesday. All right. Something else going on is a new virtual conference coming on March the 12th called WP26. This is sponsored by Human Made, which is I believe it's a British agency. They always have really good content. Anyway, it's a free virtual event. I've dropped the link for it in the chat. Where is WordPress heading this year? What's going on? Some really, really good speakers. A lot of folks from Human Made, as well as Ryan Reitveld, a web accessibility expert. Mary Hubbard will be speaking, and several others. Alex Moss from Yoast. Lots of folks speaking at this one. It's free. I would recommend just grabbing a seat for this. Should be pretty good. Let's see. Oh, this is interesting. I can't remember if we talked about this last week or not, but Google released the UCP, the Universal Commerce Protocol, a couple of weeks ago. They started talking about it with some foundational partners that did not include WooCommerce. So things like Shopify and so forth were included in their list of foundation partners that they're going to roll this out with. But WooCommerce was not listed, which made a lot of people scratch their heads. So on the latest episode of maybe not latest, but on a recent episode of the Do the Woo podcast, Matt Mullenweg talked a little bit about this and basically said, don't worry about it. No, first of all, nobody's using it, and we'll take care of it if and when it happens. Like, we're going to build some stuff to support this. Don't worry about it. So I don't know. If you do WooCommerce, this might be an interesting little take to read, as well as just listening to that Do the Woo podcast where Matt is being interviewed. Moving on to a couple other things about AI. There's an excellent series of articles from James LePage, who leads the WordPress core AI team. James is brilliant when it comes to WordPress and AI, and there's a 5-part series about the future of the web and AI, agentic commerce, web agents, and so forth. So really good article here, a series of articles. I would recommend that you take a look at it. One more little thing here I want to mention, and that's a pretty cool little tool that I ran across called lovedby.ai. And I've scanned a couple of websites with this, and I find it interesting. I don't think it's like a game changer or anything, but basically the goal of this tool is to scan your website and see just how searchable it is for AI tools, and let you see if there are any holes that you might want to fill with content or structuring things differently in order to be found by AI tools. Now, this is an automated tool to evaluate your website, which means it's not going to be 100% perfect, but it might give you some top level insight. Now, they of course want to sell you a tool that can start to make these changes for free. But like, here's just an example of a check that I ran on my own, nathaningram.com. I got a 51 out of 100, but this is the sort of things it's looking for. Do you have, lots of schema markup like facts and how-tos and articles and organization? I don't know why it didn't find the built-in schema that Cadence gives for articles. I don't know why it didn't find that. It's an automated tool, whatever. I don't use FAQ schema on my site, but it gives you an issue and the fix, right? So it's pretty good. They recommend an answer first structure. So it says sections begin directly with introductory text rather than a summary sentence that precedes further elaboration. So they want us to start to write content with a question and an answer, basically. Natural language headings, and so instead of saying pricing, say, how much does this service cost? I don't know about that for like real people. I don't know. Anyway, that's what this tool is saying might help you get your site indexed better with SEO. Try it. It's free. Lovebuy.ai. See what it comes up with for your website. Maybe it'll be helpful. Maybe it's not. But I thought it was kind of neat to just see what it was doing for my website. All right, one more little bit of schedule review here before we get into questions. First, of course, office hours every Thursday here on Agency Success. A week from Tuesday, I'll be talking about imposter syndrome. And then on February 24th, I'll be talking to clients about website security. So all those are coming up on our upcoming live streams. I'm going to drop in our link bundle once again if you're just joining us. And that is at the top of the list of that link bundle. Lots of other good resources there for you as well. All right, let's turn our attention to some questions. Hey, we stacked up 9 questions now. So if you have a question that you'd like to ask, the link to do so is in the chat. And we will get started with the first one in the list from Class. Hey, Class. All righty, Class's question is, since a website is not secure, if the computer accessing is not secure, what do you recommend for a security malware solution on a Mac? Okay, so the idea is, as we look at the various phases of security or layers of security that we need to make sure all of our things stay safe, absolutely one of those tiers needs to be good, up-to-date security software on whatever computer that you use to log into a website. This should be true not only for your computer, I hope that goes without saying, but also for clients' computers. Because if a client has a privileged login, an editor, administrator login to their website, and they have malware running, the likelihood of their session cookie being stolen by malware is increasing year after year. A couple of years ago, Thomas Rafe from We Watch Your Website published a study where the vast majority of WordPress vulnerabilities, hacks, if WordPress website compromises, were as a result of stolen session cookies. So basically that means, when you log into a WordPress site, you get a cookie, and that cookie is what lets you continue to go from page to page in that session on your website without having to log in again. Like, it remembers that you're logged in. And what will happen is malware on your computer can steal that session cookie, deliver it to a bad actor, and they're immediately authenticated. It doesn't matter if you have two-factor authentication or passkeys or any of that. If they have your session cookie, as long as that session is active, they're logged in. So that's a major deal. Now, the way to prevent this is to have really good security software on your computer. Now, I do not position myself as like a computer security expert, but I will tell you what Thomas Rafe told me when I asked him this very same question a few years ago. And he said for Macs, he recommends Sophos. So Sophos antivirus is here. And I'll just drop this link in the chat. And I've been using this now for several years, and it works great. If you're using a Windows computer, Um, Thomas says Windows Defender is good enough. Like it's a really good piece of security software. And if you still happen to subscribe to or have never challenged that really old piece of advice or feeling that Macs don't get viruses, that day has passed. Macs do get viruses, Macs do get malware, and you really do need a good security solution. So whether you use Sophos or whatever, however you want to pronounce it, or something else, um, yeah, you need to have good antivirus, anti-malware software on your computer for any computer that logs into the website. And it's something to emphasize with your client as well. If your client has malware, it's going to be a problem. Also, of course, making sure that your browsers are set to auto update and getting the latest versions of Chrome installed automatically. Don't manually update your browser. Like you shouldn't have to do that anymore. Your browser needs to stay up to date to deal with those honestly very frequent 0-day attacks that will hit Chrome. Another place to watch on your computer is the browser extensions. Browser extensions are notorious avenues for malware to get into your system. So, whatever browser extensions you have installed, make sure they're quality and reputable and not just, some person's browser extension that you stuck on your computer. Because you're giving them access to your browser and everything that happens in it. All right. So, some other ideas dropped into the chat about malware. That's very good. Okay. Class, does that answer your question? It's a great discussion, and I'm glad you brought it up. Good. All righty. Let's move on to Ben B. Hey, Ben. All right. So we're talking about Cloudflare domain name transfers. And by the way, I recommend Cloudflare as a registrar. I use them. We used GoDaddy for many years, and we're paying a little extra every year to get a lower cost on all of our domains. And we moved to Cloudflare a few years ago, and it's just the cheapest you'll find. And it's very good, very easy. They don't try to upsell you. They basically resell you the domain at their cost. It's the ICANN fee, and that's really it. The cost of the domain plus the ICANN fee, and that's it. So anyway, Ben is in this process. I've transferred 3 domain names from my company to Cloudflare due to the low pricing. So domain.com, domain.co.uk, domain.net. 2 are just for ownership of the brand. Yep. During the transfer, Cloudflare insisted on creating a free plan for both with DNS records. Yes, yes. So DNS has to be managed at Cloudflare. Just as, by the way, if you register with a different registrar, it's going to have DNS records on that domain name, even if it's just a couple, even if it's just an A record that points to their name servers or whatever. Every domain is going to have some DNS. Now, under the Cloudflare umbrella, what that means is you need to set up a free plan just so that it has an account to live in Cloudflare. Does that make sense? And then once that the domain account is set up, you can transfer it into that account. So the question, the 2 that are just for ownership, how would you redirect directly to domain.com? Great question. And I would do that with a redirect rule. Hang on just a second. Let me get logged into Cloudflare off screen, and I will show you where to do that. So let's look at WPNathan. Well, there's my agency. Let's try. I can never remember which account. I think it's this one. Yes. All right. Let's look at WP1.dev. And so once this is set up, we're going to go into rules and page rules, create a page rule, and say, whatever your domain is, we're going to, oh, I'm on the wrong spot. Hang on a minute. 1 second. 1 second. Well, I thought I was in the right spot. There. All right. So whatever the URL is, in this case, we'll just say wp1.dev star. We're going to forward with a 301 redirect to wpnathan.com. Now, when I save and deploy this, oh, whoops. When I save and deploy this, that should set up our forwarding just like this. So let's just double check that. Yep, just forward it on, just like that. So let me open that up again because I did that kind of quickly. You put in your URL here with an asterisk, so it's wildcard, anything after that. Forwarding with a 301 to the new location, that's it. So that should get you exactly what you want. And you're basically, lots of registrars have their own little control panel with forwardings and all of that in their DNS. You're by creating that free Cloudflare account, you're just moving into Cloudflare's UI to do all of that. And for a transfer, you have to create that account first, even though the domain lives somewhere else. But then once that exists, you can transfer the domain into that new account that you created. Works pretty well. All right, Ben, is that good? Did I answer your question or did we miss anything? Ben, can domain transfer take longer than 24 hours? It can, depending on where you're transferring from. But you just make sure you get the codes that you have to enter and all of that, and then let it go. It can take 24 to 48 hours, especially if you're on one of the web hosts that's just a little older and they haven't updated their technology. When we were transferring away from GoDaddy and into Cloudflare, it was happening almost immediately, just within a few minutes. Yeah. All right. Next up, of course, that was me at that moment in time. And who knows, sometimes GoDaddy does weird delays on things. Okay. Next up is Melanie. Hey, Melanie. Melanie says, I am embracing AI more and more. Good. Have you set up skills in Claude? Do you have any tips on starting to set that up? Melanie, I have not gotten into that with Claude yet, but that is on my list of things to investigate as soon as I have some investigation time. Actually setting up Claude local, I've done that and it works really well. And I just need to give it some skills. So when I learn how to do that, it's likely we'll create a live stream around that topic. But would anybody in the chat like to talk about this? Do you have any skills that you've set up for Claude to do anything interesting? Now, I will tell you this, Chris from my team was experimenting with the Claude bot. How many of you have seen this? It's CLAWD, Claude, this one, Claude Bot AI. This is a local personal assistant, which I've heard really cool things and also some scary things about. But it basically runs on your local computer and can do things for you. And so Chris last night experimented with setting it up to build a little app using Cloudflare pages and Cloudflare workers. And it kind of did it overnight by itself, which is kind of neat. So we're investigating it. I don't have anything to share groundbreaking today on that, but it is definitely something I'm dabbling in. So all the things that are being mentioned in the chat, the scary stories, what you give it access to, that's really the issue. Like it's a personal assistant, automated AI tool. And so you want to be judicious about what you give it access to, just like you would be judicious about a human being. Am I going to give you this new assistant access to a credit card? Probably not. Do they get to see everything on my computer? Probably not. So we'll give it access to a few things. And that's really key to this. But it will only access the things that you authorize it to access. So, yeah. It could be really cool. We're still experimenting with it. So, Melanie, sorry, that was kind of a non-answer, but it's a fun discussion. There is a question I want to pick up from the chat from the last conversation from Gene. Do you recommend buying and managing client domains? I've been telling people to purchase their own. And so this is a wonderful little rabbit trail alongside that domain discussion. I would strongly recommend that you have clients buy their own domains, simply from a liability perspective. Years ago, I used to buy domains for my clients as a service. And of course, we'd set them as the registrant. But when I had my business analyzed by someone for risk management, they said, "Ooh, this is a problem. Like, what happens if you die, or what happens if for some reason there's a payment problem and you lose a domain for a client?" Like, domains are irreplaceable, and it can cause potentially thousands and thousands of dollars of real damage to clients if their website's down or they've lost, historical SEO, traction on their website, all these things. It's a huge, huge risk. So we have clients buy their own domain and then grant us access to that domain. And we recommend them setting up with Cloudflare. But yeah, I would not have clients, I would not buy domains on behalf of a client. That is a great question. Thanks for asking it, Gene. All right. Shanta is next. Hey, Shanta. Oh boy. Here we go. The invitation for me to climb on a soapbox. I take a deep breath and continue reading. We did a webinar for a particular industry last night that brought up some good ideas, and I wanted to check on a possible process. There are quite a few resources that we think we can send to their membership. So the thinking was to send an email to the organizer formatted for their members that they can send out, including some resources we already have, YouTube, etc. Might drive some traffic. Great. Then do a YouTube video answering many of those questions, because some can be more general in nature. Take the transcript from that, turn it into a blog post, and that to the, yeah, great. Any ideas on tooling or hints that might help this process if I have it right? If you have any additional thoughts, I'd love to hear them too, especially making this a repeatable process. Great. Okay. So I think this is a wonderful idea where you're taking some of your existing content, like a recorded video for this niche, and then getting the transcript, dumping it in an AI tool, have it create a series of blog posts or social media posts about it. I think that's wonderful. It's that's the way to do content today. So I'm trying to figure out what the question is I need to answer. Yes, 100% do this. And as you build out a process for this, it's likely, if you're going to do this for other segments of your customer base, then, figure out what the prompt is going to be that's going to get you the post that you want based on the transcript of the video. Save that prompt. That becomes part of a system, and you can crunch out all of this content pretty quickly once you have refined the first time what the prompt is. Now, one key that you can use is that in the process of the conversation where you're kind of back and forth with the AI tool and getting it to generate the kind of blog post or kind of video script that you want, get that nailed down. And then you can ask it at the end, once it's generated that is kind of the perfect post or perfect script for you. You can ask the AI tool, what is a prompt that I can give you in the future to give me this exact kind of output again, and let it give you the prompt. One thing that AI tools are really good at is writing prompts for AI tools. And so you could take that and then save it for the future to build out a system for this. Does that make sense? Shanta saying in the chat, checking to see if I have it right, if there are other things I might have missed. You've mentioned it could be multiple posts. Sure. We were thinking it could be one, like a follow-up. And it really just depends on what your communication strategy is to this segment of clients. If the post is essentially a landing page, more or less, if it's a sales page where you're trying to get them to take action, then one is fine. But what you might also discover is that landing page that's centered on, a conversion could be, like, the information could be parsed out into a number of generalized blog posts that can go on your website. Exactly, Shanta. A single video, turn it into a few posts. Absolutely. But it just depends on your goal. So, if the point of this content on the web you're trying to create is to is to generate that conversion. Like you're giving them information, but the purpose of that page is not to inform, but instead to drive them to the conversion, whatever that may be. That's going to be a different kind of writing. And if conversion is your goal, then one page is what you want. You don't want a series necessarily, unless that message needs to be split, right? We're going to talk about selling it this way or that way or this way. Then multiple posts or landing pages would be the way to go. Very good. So the end of all this is make sure whatever you're using to record, whatever it is that you're recording, make sure that you have an easy way to get the transcript. So, I use an AI meeting note taker that gives an excellent transcript. YouTube is going to transcript it for you, but you get timestamps and stuff in that transcript, and it's sometimes hard to work with. Let's move on to the next question. We still have 7 questions in the queue, so questions are coming in. And that's an interesting post that Terry just made in the chat. Take a look at that, Shanta. I think it's pretty interesting. Next up is Chris. Hey, Chris. All righty. So Chris says, been working in Beaver Builder, used it for years. Lately, I've found there is a separate section under tools called Layout, CSS, and JavaScript. This seems to be page-centric. CSS added here only impacts the page I'm on. CSS added to customizer is acting weird, almost like the order of CSS is different. Then there's CSS on the actual Beaver Builder module. I'm confused about what to use when and how. What is the correct way to use these different options so that stuff actually works the way you want? It's a great question. Let me see if I don't know if I've got Beaver Builder on this side or not. Let me just quickly check, because there are multiple layers of CSS on the site. Yes, we have Beaver Builder. Let me see if I've got a page set up for that. I do. Look at that. Okay. So, and there's actually another layer of CSS as well, Chris, that you need to be aware of. So let's start at the bottom level. So with Beaver Builder, and this is one of the things we love about Beaver Builder, is the level of control it gives us as developers. And so on every single module, you have the ability to add specific CSS and even JavaScript that only applies to that module. So it's only going to apply to what you're doing, right here in this module. It doesn't get bigger. So in every single module, and that's row, like heading module, column, row, box module, whatever, every module gives you these options. Do you need to add selectors? Absolutely. So you would add the same kind of selectors that you would have, globally. Now, so there's module level CSS. Now, there's also what you just mentioned, the layout, CSS, and JavaScript. So this applies to everything on the page. So you've got JavaScript and you've got CSS. That applies page wide. There's also, in your global settings, there's global CSS and global JavaScript. Now, this applies site-wide. So what I would recommend that you do is take that stuff out of the customizer and put it here in the global CSS, because that's going to do the same thing, but it makes it easily accessible and editable right here in Beaver Builder. And as you make changes here, you're going to see it live on the page. So that's what we recommend. Matter of fact, we've gone away from even having a styles.css in our child theme, and we just put all that stuff over here in the global module. Now, the reason also this is important to do it this way, instead of having some CSS here and there, besides it being fragmented, is that when Beaver Builder renders a page, it creates a layout CSS bundle. So it's all the CSS for that page, whether it's global, layout, or module CSS, and it puts it all in one single CSS file, so that speeds things up. So that's the way I recommend to do it. Does that make sense, Chris? You good? You're asking, where is that one CSS file found? Which one are we talking about? The one that compiles it all? I mean, you'd have to see it. It's generated. Well, there's not like a file sitting there. It's generated dynamically when the page is rendered. All righty. Next up is Beth Livingston. Hey, Beth. I knew this was going to come up. I want to block all the Californians from accessing my site. In the DR, a tiny fraction of my audience. How do I block an entire U.S. state? I don't know how you do that, Beth, unfortunately. There may be some exotic ways you can do that by IP address. I don't think you would ever be able to do it successfully. Like there's not a place you can go and go block the Californians. Doesn't work that way. You can block country traffic, but not state traffic, unfortunately. So sorry. I wish it was that easy. All righty. Next up is Doug. Oh, enter the California jokes. Yes. Okay. Terry's suggesting maybe there are IP addresses assigned per state, and it's not that simple. Large, like for example, my fiber provider here is through AT&T, and they have a block of IP addresses assigned to fiber. Like it's not state based, unfortunately. Yeah. Okay. Doug is next. All right. Not a question, just sharing. Looking forward to ACF Pro's new feature, adding schema to pages using AI. What could possibly go wrong? I haven't seen this. All right. It is going to use AI to do the thing. So, maybe this may tie back to that tool that I showed you of maybe adding some schema that the AIs are looking for. Yeah. Interesting. All right. So if you are an ACF user, I'm going to drop this in the chat. This looks pretty cool. Pretty cool. Thanks for sharing that, Doug. So there's some chatter in the chat around using a VPN. And I don't know, I would imagine that if, like, let's say you're in California and you use a VPN and you visit a website and you get a tracking cookie dropped, can you then claim that your rights have been violated by CIPA? I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't play one on TV, but I would imagine that the argument against that would be that you have taken steps to obfuscate your location. Therefore, you don't get this coverage anymore. That's what I would think. But I don't know. That's far too logical to be legal sometimes, right? Anyway. Sue can check with her in-house counsel on that. All righty. Next up is also Beth Livingston. Hey, Beth. Follow on to the previous question. I saw a site the other day here in the Dominican Republic managed by Russians that said this site is not intended for residents of the EU. Could you do something like that for the California thing? Like, if you are from California, please do not use this website. If you do, you do so at your own risk. I mean, I don't know. Again, this would be a question for a lawyer, of which I am not. But as I understand it, my web developer's understanding of this law, about which I've read a lot in the last 2 weeks, if you drop a tracking cookie, you are liable under CIPA, period. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't think, even though your Russians said this, I don't think that would help them with GDPR, for example. Okay. Moving right along. Ben is next. Mr. Anderson. All right, Ben. Ben says, been playing around with WP Debug Toolkit. WP Debug Toolkit. That is a plugin that we talked about a while ago. Am I right? It rings a bell. And it is, interesting. All right. No, it's a SaaS tool. All right. So there's all those things. All right. Anyway, it's great for checking and filtering the WP debug log, view the exact code line with the warning error, monitoring errors with email notification, and it has dark mode. Okay. So Ben is promoting WP debug toolkit. So there you go. Take a look at it if you like this. Anything to make a debug log easier to access I like it. I will tell you though that we created, like, one of my little having fun projects over the holidays was that I built a little app using lovable.dev, which is a really, really cool app building platform. And by app, I mean a web app, not like a phone app. But this tool actually looks at our error logs We can see the last 1,000 lines of the error log in the web app. And it's actually I made a button that when you click it, it prepins the error log with a canned AI prompt. And you can just paste that right into your AI tool, and it analyzes all the log entries in the log and gives you kind of a summary of what's going on, what each error is about and how many occurrences. It's pretty cool. So that app does a lot of other things to help us manage sites, but it's pretty neat. And it is really helpful to have a central place where you can easily see all the logs going on your site. Anyway. And oddly enough, it wasn't that hard to build. That's what was so wild. Okie dokie. Next up is Dave. Oh, Dave, this is such a great question, and I should have taken more time to deal with this earlier. Dave said, is there a way for me to confirm that my sites are not using cookies so that my clients don't get a California letter? When I tell them about this California demand letter thing, I want to assure them their site is not using cookies at all. Dave, are you using Google Analytics? You'd be surprised off also how many cookies are dropped by WordPress. So let's just take a quick look. I'm going to go to nathaningram.com. And I am going to hit the inspector. This is how you look at your cookies, okay? Just open up the inspector, go to application and hit cookies, and you'll need to click on your website right here. So what's going on here? I've got the two Google Analytics trackers. This is Cloudflare. This TU is the Termageddon user-centric cookie banner. And then there's WordPress. So there's a bunch of cookies. WordPress is going to drop a cookie. It's just going to. So every website, if you use it, it's going to have some cookies. Now, the problem in these lawsuits, again, this is as I understand it, as a web developer, not an attorney. The problem in these lawsuits are these third-party tracking cookies like Google Analytics, LinkedIn, Meta, all these tracking pixels. And some of these are security related or delivery of the consent tool related right here. And then, of course, WordPress needs this for the CMS. So Melanie's mentioning Google Analytics, Google Fonts. And this is one big thing. I think all of us need to make sure we're not using Google Fonts. And there's a number of, and we're not like pulling Google Fonts from the Google repository because that's every user that comes to your website. If you're pulling the font from Google in their CDN instead of loading it locally, that user is sending their information to Google in order to access that font to view the site. So there are a number of tools that allow you to run local Google fonts. One of them is a plugin called Local Google Fonts. This one will help you with that. Or most themes, really newer quality themes like Cadence, Astra, a lot of the newer themes have a button in the customizer or something that says load fonts, Google Fonts locally, and it just does it for you. So if we were using Google Fonts, we'd see another cookie here from that. It would be gstatic or something like that right here. Yeah. So that's how you see your cookies. Does that help, Dave? Paul, is there a way to see if a site is loading Google Fonts? Yeah, you would see a cookie here. I think it should look like gstatic or something like that. And I'm saying gstatic, something like that. That's Google's CDN where the font calls happen. You might see it show up a little bit differently here. Yeah. So you might be surprised just how many cookies are being loaded. All right. So are you good? Anything else on that, Dave? That's a great question. I can show you that because I've done that about 100 times over the last couple of weeks. Looking at different sites. Like in our, just for what it's worth, if you're thinking about this with clients, we went through a whole process of, all the websites we have, we're managing on a spreadsheet. Do they have privacy in term policies? Where did they come from? And use that to make a decision tree of what we're going to recommend for every client. And that's taken us a little while to do, but we're in the process of about to start talking to clients. I don't really have a checklist, Elizabeth. And if I do, it would be so um, like internally, the nature would be so internal, then it's not really something I could share. Could I share the decision tree? Well, so uh, like for example, I don't want to share the spreadsheet because it's got client data, but basically, we're looking at, and we used an AI tool to go look at the websites and see, do they have privacy and terms links, in the footer to help populate that spreadsheet. That was cool. That saved some time. But it's basically, is it a small nonprofit site where we know just by knowing these clients, are they really looking at Google Analytics? Probably not. If not, we're going to recommend them to go to something like Independent Analytics as the recommendation, but also say, even moving to independent analytics doesn't give you good, solid privacy policies and that sort of thing. We still suggest Termageddon, but this will at least help deal with this current situation. And so a lot of our smaller personal sites or nonprofit sites, small nonprofits, we have several of those. It just makes sense for them to go to independent. Does that make sense at all? That's roughly the decision tree that we're using. And we're offering, a consult on this. So, click your schedule an appointment. We'll take 15 minutes and talk through the issue with you. Last but not least is Tanya. Is anyone else having issues with Cadence throwing up? This block has encountered an error and cannot be previewed. Ugh. Message on some Cadence blocks, typically blocks that are using dynamic content. Also getting update failed, response is not a valid JSON response. That's not good. Tanya, where is this hosted? Is this on good hosting? Yeah. Okay. So it could be environment related. Like if there's not enough resources when something's trying to render, it's going to fail. That feels like what some of this is. If it's on sketchy hosting, that may be your issue, but I don't know. I've never seen any of these, so I'm not sure of the exact problem and what's causing it. Oh, interesting. So Sue is saying it happened to her when certain files and plugins were being updated. Tanya, it's on shared hosting. Ugh, yeah. Melanie's saying I have good hosting and got the JSON one yesterday. Interesting. So I have not seen this. I've not chased it down, so I'm not quite sure what to tell you there. That is weird. Hey, Tanya, have you heard of hosting.com? Hosting.com offers really great hosting products. You might want to look into that. I know you've heard of it. Okay. So class has seen it as well. So there's clearly something going on here. I'm blaming the hosting, Tanya, but it might be something in Cadence. Who knows? This is why, though, we want good quality hosting around all the sites that we manage, because it will save you so much time not having to figure out, is hosting a culprit in this? Yeah. That is odd. So I don't know. And some folks are saying that they see it. Um, Interesting. So clearly, reach out to Cadence. Let them know what you're seeing. All righty. Well, folks, that brings us, let's see, I think that brought us to the end of our questions. We are finished. Yes, and it is just right at the top of the hour. So let me quickly remind you of the upcoming live streams as we did just a little bit earlier. Got a couple of really good ones coming up this month. The first, a week from Tuesday, I'll be talking about imposter syndrome and finally talking to web clients about website security. Then on March the 10th, we'll be talking about dialing in your pricing as an agency. If you'd like to join us for any of those, the link to do so is there in the chat. Upcoming.myagencysuccess.com gets you to this link tree, and that is where you sign up for all the things. All right. Well, everybody, thanks for hanging out one more hour with me here. Hopefully, it's been a good use of your time. You've picked up a few things and had a little bit of fun. That's going to wrap it up for us today. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you back here next Thursday for office hours on hosting.com's Agency Success, where we go further together.